then we have to come to the Vedic philosophy of moderation, or the Hindu philosophy of moderation, that is the Parisankhya Vidhi. But where does Parisankhya Vidhi come from? So we know that in Vedic, India, there were six schools of thoughts, and today only few are left. So today we might know about yoga, but the thing we call yoga today are just asanas. But okay, the yoga as a school of thought has survived to some extent. Vedant has survived better than most of the others. And this idea of Parisankhya Vidhi actually comes from this school of thought which is called Mimamsa. And in the Mimamsa darshan is purely Vedic. It is based on the Vedas. So that means that you can say that right from the first scripture of our civilization, this idea of moderation has been present.
Namaste to all the viewers that have joined us today. Sangam Talks welcomes you. Today we talk about Parisankhya Vidhi, or the Hindu moderation principle, and we do it with our speaker today, Kapidhwaj ji, who intends on maintaining his anonymity. He is aiming to understand the civilization and spread it to the people around him. As the moderation principle is a way of living in the Sanatan lifestyle, he, in doing so, tries to answer four principal questions, namely, what is the Hindu moderation principle? What are the roots of it? What texts hint towards it? And what do the texts explain about it? I would welcome Kapidhwaj ji and request him to take over from here.
What I believe is that this is a topic that we should be talking more about, because it is practiced knowingly or unknowingly by all of us in our daily lives, most of the practicing Hindus. So let's start with it. So first of all, let's first know, let's first discuss what are the things that we already know about our culture, of our civilization. That first thing is that we are aware that acceptance as a principle is weaved into the very fabric of Sanatan Dharma. Now, why I use this word acceptance and not tolerance, which is more popular these days, is because tolerance says that I might not agree with you and I might not like you, but I am going to tolerate you for some till some time. And on the other hand, acceptance says that you might be different from me, and you might follow a different language, a different faith, but I accept you for who you are. Now, I would leave it to the listeners here that what they want to practice, tolerance or acceptance. The second thing is that we are also aware that Sanatana Dharma teaches the principles of moderation over absolutes. And the very basic example that we see in our daily lives is during the pujas and the festivals and the fastings that our family members do. And all of those times, we often see this, that we always say that do only what which is comfortable with you. Do not go beyond and do not start punishing your body. And this is where we see the moderation like very commonly in our daily lives. The third is Sanatana Dharma. In our Sanatana Dharma, the idea of capital punishment and prohibition is very rare as compared to other faith systems around the world. I would not say that it does not exist. There are texts where some aspects are mentioned, but we can say that it is very rare as compared to others. And in today's India, it is not followed. I would first, uh, explain the aspects, what all things are there, which I'm going to discuss in this call. So one of the thing is that, okay, moderation is, uh, I understood moderation is there in our lives, but why moderation and why not absolutes? So the opposite of moderation is to say that everything should be absolute, no, nothing should be moderated. So either do it or don't do it, or and if you're doing it, then it doesn't matter how much you are doing it. It's just one or zero. It's just a game of one and zero. So first question is that why moderation is required and why not only absolutes? Second thing is even if moderation is required, even if moderation is better than the absolutist idea, uh, how can we be sure that this idea of moderation which is present in our country, in our civilization today, is coming from 5,000-year-old roots, Vedic roots? How can we say that, okay, since moderation is being practiced in most of the Western countries, how can we be not sure that we have learned it from them? It might be the case. So is it just a cultural thing which we are practicing in today's world, or does it have its roots in a very ancient time? The third thing is, what are the examples in our daily lives when we follow moderation or when we follow this principle and we see it in practice? Now, going to the first point that I want to explain uh, before going to this talk or going deep into this talk is the concept of the three words which are common in our Vedic literature, that is sanskars, pravritti, and nivritti. Now, let's take this verse from Bhagavad Gita, chapter 18, where Krishna is saying to Arjun that a person who knows what is his pravritti and a person who knows what is his nivritti, what tasks should be done, what tasks should not be done, what should be feared and what should not be feared, that person is a person of better intellect, and that person is uh, deserves to get moksha. Now, from this shloka, I would take these two words in the beginning itself, pravritti and nivritti. Now, let's discuss what is pravritti and nivritti. But before that, we would have to look at this diagram, and it might not be a very high resolution diagram, but I would like you to forgive me and go through with it anyways. So this is a image of a pond, and most of you would have said that seen sometimes that sometimes when a pond is there, small bubbles of air, pockets of air keep coming out of it from the bed of the pond. Now think of this pond as your mind, as your brain, and the bed of this pond are the sanskars that you have got. Now, whenever we think of sanskars, most of us generally think like touching the feet of elders and, having a very decent attitude. But sanskars not only mean that. In this context, sanskars are the assimilation of all the learnings that we have accumulated since the moment we were born, good, bad, everything, and beyond that. So in Vedic terms, it is the learnings that we have learned in this life and what we have taken from the past lives. And in scientific terms, it might mean that the learnings that we have taken in this life plus the genetic information that we carry through the process of evolution, or the DNA, the genes which we carry from our ancestors. What is the importance of sanskars? So based on the sanskars, the in our mind, all our thoughts which come across in our mind, think of each of those thoughts as a bubble which comes from the bed of this pond or ocean. And the higher this bubble goes, the more prominent that thought becomes in our mind. And each of those bubbles might be arising from a small crack, which we call as vritti. Now, whenever a thought comes in our mind, so suppose that you buy a shirt today, or you buy something today, and you do some act today, and if you think on it, you realize that the action is performed today, but the seeds of that action were planted few days ago or sometime back in the past, where that thought was just in form of an inception in your mind, but slowly that thought started taking shape, and at one point in time it became so dominant that it motivated you to act on it, right? So this is what is represented, that the bubble has come to the surface and we have acted in favor of it. Now, each of those vrittis, which take the form of thoughts in our head, there are two ways we can go about that. If we perform our action in favor of that, we call it pravritti. And if we perform our action against that, we call it nivritti. So therefore, you can say that if there is an instinct which says do it, do this, do that, do it, you call it pravritti. This is the pravritti of this individual. And if something which says don't do it, don't do that, then you can say that this is what is the nivritti of that mind. Now, going forward, coming to the scientific terms, we can today in scientific language, it has been expressed in the form of neural pathways. So whenever we do an act, so there is a neural pathway which is created in our brain, and the more we do it again and again, the more uh, the layer of fats are getting accumulated on that neural pathway, and the easier it is for us to do that task. For example, if you go to gym for the first time, you might feel a lot of resistance in your mind, that I don't want to go, it is very hard. But after 1 week, after 2 weeks, it becomes relatively easier for you. Suppose if you want to do exercise, if you want to go to gym, even if bad habits, suppose someone is smoking for the first time, they would feel resistance. But after one point in time, that would become their natural inclination. The other option will not be there. So this is what becomes that the activities which we do most of the times become our strong pathway, and the activities, the other pathways, the other options that our brain gave us, that you can do this also, those become the weak pathway. Now, what are the common pravrittis of humans? Now, we all are different individuals, but I would say that across all the human beings which exist on this planet, the most common pravrittis of humans are these three things. So, food, sex, and money. And why do I say that? So, food is, these things are not of today, these things are ancient in one term or another. Because, first of all, food is what ensures our survival. Food is what ensures that this body is alive. Therefore, from the most ancient of the times, food is required for our survival. Hence, it is the most common pravritti of a human being to eat, to go towards food. Second is sex. Sex is the only way till now, till date, where a species can survive. We haven't found any other way where a species can transfer their genetic information to the next generation, a clone of themselves, and make that species survive for a longer period of time. And the third is money. So we would say that, okay, money is created by human beings. Money is not common among animals and all that. But still, in human beings, money ensures that you have a higher social status. It ensures that your chances of survival are higher. The chances of your education improve. The chances of your or the opportunities that you get in life improve. The chances of your ending up higher in the dominance hierarchy in the society improves. And therefore money is also important, because in the end, the aim of money is to improve our social status, in, which in turn ensures that we get to have more control over the first two objects that we taught, food and sex. So ensures our survival in the long run. Now, these are not things that we should be thinking about controlling, right? Because if we stop eating food, then we are going to die, basically. If our species stops doing sex, then our species will stop existing. And so then what is this parisankhya vidhi for? What is this moderation for? So whenever there is an act, then in some point of time in future, that act gets diverse into multiple aspects of it. For example, food is not just food. We are not just counting calories and eating. We eat junk foods. We also eat drink alcohol. People drink alcohol. People people take different types of foods, so vegetarian foods, non-vegetarian foods, all kinds of foods are there. And then in case of money also, we don't just earn money and like just be like that. We spend it on different kind of things. Some people spend it on investment, some people spend it on gambling, some people spend it on buying things. So all these actions that we are doing are different aspects of these three core motivations, I would say. But these three are not the only one. This can be expanded to a long list, but these are the core motivations, I would say, around the world. Wherever you go, humans would be inclined towards. In Mahabharata, there comes a story, I think you would have heard it, that one of the descendants of Arjun, who is that Kali Yuga has entered his kingdom, and so he goes on to search Kali Yuga, that where is Kali Yuga, and at one uh, place in his kingdom, he sees that there is a man who is dragging a bull, and the thing about that is the bull has its three legs broken, and if the bull is only standing on one leg, and the man is mercilessly beating the bull. So that bull is the representative of dharma. And in Kali Yuga, Dharma is standing only on one leg. The three legs of Dharma are broken. And the Kali Yuga is beating that bull mercilessly. So he becomes very angry. He goes on to say that I'm going to kill you. I'm going to punish you for this. Then the Kali started, praying for his life, that please don't kill me. Do something else. So Parikshit says that I will give you options, that you can only exist in 5 places. A place where prostitution is done, a place where gambling is done, place where alcohol is consumed, place where meat eating is done, and a place where gold is present. So I am not saying that in this in a religious terms, but if we think of it in psychological terms, that even our ancestors realized that most of the addictive behaviors of the society which exist today, most of them exist in these 5 domains. Most of the crimes which are happening are either happening because of uh, the health issues, the crimes, or the negative aspects of society. If you form a range of it, most of them will end up in in these 5 boxes. But why bother controlling this? Like, who are we to say that control this instincts, or control your food, control your behavior? And anyways, government is not authorized to intervene in our personal lives. So if government is not intervening and it's legal, so why should anyone look at it from a different perspective? Why should anyone think that we need to control these aspects of our life? And here, I would like to show you some of the data points. And then maybe by seeing those data points, you can decide that what are the results of our actions that we do. Now, this, I'm not sure if this, chart is clear, but this is the chart of the carbon footprint of each of the foods that we eat, most of the foods that is eaten around the world. And you see that each of these foods have a certain level of carbon greenhouse gas emissions that is getting produced. And on the top you see is beef. The highest greenhouse gases emissions are from red meat, basically beef, lamb, and mutton. Then comes cheese, and then other food items are present. So, and if you can look at the data points, then 14.5% of the total greenhouse gas emissions around the world are happening because of the meat industry. Now, if I say this to you, that your food choices, your dietary choices will have an impact on the greenhouse emissions of this planet, the things you eat, that is not government's job to tell you what you eat, but it is it is your job to know that what your diet can affect the environment. Now, coming to a different point, that even if you don't think about environment, you have to think that what is the consequences of the kinds of foods we eat. So if it is a common knowledge that if we eat healthy food, then we'll be healthy, and if we don't eat healthy food, then we'll not be healthy. Now, a simple thing is that it is not the government's job again to tell you what to eat and what not to eat, but it is our job to keep ourselves healthy. So for the sake of ourselves, for our family and all that. And this is where the Vedic Shastras or the Vedic scriptures help us, because they tell us like in what level of moderation we need to practice these things. Now, coming to the next point. So if you see all of these points, you see the effect of alcohol in the society. So the number of deaths that happen in the society today, these are sad numbers, but these are numbers nonetheless. And the in the United States, around 69% of people are either overweight or obese. And if you are overweight or obese, this is just a prerequisite to getting disease in future, like diabetes and all that kinds of lifestyle based diseases. Now again, this is eating junk food is not illegal, but it is going to affect you anyways. Your body doesn't care if a thing is written in the book of law or not. Your body works on different principle, on the principles of nature, not by the principles of United States of America's constitution or India's constitution, for that matter. Therefore, we need to follow the principles which help us better decide better on how to lead our lives and how to handle these pravrittis in our life, which make us take these decisions, which might put us in a wrong position tomorrow. Now, when I show you the data like that, then there will be two kinds of people who will say that ban these things, ban everything. So no junk food, no one will be able to eat junk food, and therefore everyone will be fit. And someone will say that okay, ban alcohol, and someone will say ban meat and ban everything. But the reality is that this ban attitude never works. Not only is it like kind of childish, but in reality, these actions do not work in society practically. These are just on the paper. These are just official numbers that okay, we have banned. But whenever you ban something, a parallel ecosystem comes up, which starts providing people what they want. And that way the government has no control over that ecosystem, and over the time the same ecosystem becomes the stronghold of organized crime and other things. And you can take examples of states in India where alcohol is banned, and I happen to be from one of them, and I can pretty sure tell you that not only alcohol is you know being continuously consumed by people, but it has also given rise to selling of fake alcohol, and which causes death. And most of the many times people actually die. This is what happens when you ban things, because government has no control over those things. Now the second thing which people can do or governments can do is to moderate behaviors. Government says that okay, I will allow these things to happen, but that way all these actions, all these things will go through the channel of the state, of the government, and then government will be able to control it the way they want. They can reduce it or they can increase it. But once the moderation has come, this idea of moderation, once we have decided that moderation is good for us and moderation is a better medium, more practical medium for any government or state to practice, then then we have to come to the Vedic philosophy of moderation or the Hindu philosophy of moderation, that is the Parisankhya Vidhi. But where does Parisankhya Vidhi come from? So we know that in Vedic India, there were six schools of thoughts, and today only few are left. So today we might know about yoga, but the thing we call yoga today are just asanas. But okay, the yoga as a school of thought has survived to some extent. Vedant has survived better than most of the others. And this idea of Parisankhya Vidhi actually comes from this school of thought which is called Mimamsa. And in the Mimamsa darshan is purely Vedic. It is based on the Vedas. So that means that you can say that right from the first scripture of our civilization, this idea of moderation has been present. And this idea of Parisankhya Vidhi has been the most ancient of the ideas of the Vedic civilization. Now, what is Parisankhya Vidhi? I have spoken about moderation and I have spoken about all these things. Parisankhya Vidhi comes from the Mimamsa school of thought, and Mimamsa school of thought is purely Vedic. That means it has existed from the time when the first scripture, that is Rig Ved, which was written. And therefore we can safely say that Parisankhya Vidhi is one of the most ancient ideas or philosophies which is present in our Vedic, Vedic faith or the Sanatan Dharma. Now coming to the definition of it, that what is Parisankhya Vidhi? And Parisankhya Vidhi basically means implied prohibition. Now, what does that mean? That whenever you do a task for two objectives, one objective is the fulfillment of your desire, and the second objective is the prohibition of the desire at the same time, then that is called Parisankhya Vidhi. Means you have two objectives. One is the fulfillment and second is the prohibition. For example, if a person smokes 10 cigarettes a day and you say that you are going to continue smoking cigarettes, but every week, every other week, you are going to decrease the count of cigarettes you smoke in a day by one. So in first week, suppose he smokes 10, 70, then second week he smokes 63. Now a person who is looking from above will say that you are encouraging smoking cigarettes, but in reality, we are encouraging that person to, you know, inculcate the principle of moderation into smoking, and which will slowly lead to him or her, leaving the habit of smoking. But we are not doing it suddenly. We are not saying from tomorrow you are not going to do this. We are saying that you are going to do in a step-by-step process. And this is what Parisankhya Vidhi means. Now, Parisankhya Vidhi can be understood in two ways. One is Shroti and second is Lakshani. Now, Shroti means exclusivity, kind of an exclusivity principle, where you are allowed to do an act, but you are only allowed to do that act in a specific condition. For example, if I say, government says that you are allowed to drink alcohol, but you are only allowed to drink alcohol in a region which the government has, control over. For example, a bar or, a pub where government gives a formal license. That means those regions are being controlled by government by laws, that they have certain regulations to follow. Therefore, government has allowed that, but at the same time, it has moderated it, or it has prohibited it to only a certain region of the society. Therefore, that is of one example of Parisankhya Vidhi. The second type of Parisankhya Vidhi, which I would say, is Lakshanik. And I would explain it later. But, before that, let's, discuss some other outcomes of Parisankhya Vidhi. So first thing is that what Parisankhya Vidhi ensures. Now, Parisankhya Vidhi ensures the most basic part, basic thing, is that all the activities which are being done in the society will be moderated and will be done in the overwatch of our cultural ethos or our scriptures of our shastras. Second thing is that since the society has accepted those actions, then society will also accept the outcome of those actions. The society will not abandon the individuals getting involved in those actions when the actions are not in favor, the consequences are not in favor of the society. Third thing is that this Parisankhya Vidhi accepts that it is not ideal. It's not ideal. Everyone knows that it's not ideal to drink, or it's not ideal to do any number of tasks, but it accepts that it is not ideal. Therefore, it is realistic. It is not a silo based idea written in a book somewhere kept in a library. It could be practiced today, and it is being practiced today in our society. And it is the fourth thing is that it is personalized. That means every human being gets to decide what their capabilities are, and they get to decide how they want to practice it. Now, one example which I would say, that if the society goes on the goes with the idea of banning and the idea of outcasting everyone which the society thinks are not good enough for them, then at one point in time there will be a large section of society that will be treated as outcasts, that will be treated as criminals, and that will be treated as non mainstream people. And this will not help them. This is just egoistic thinking, when people think that they are better than others somehow. And in Europe there was a study done that when addicts were treated like not treated like criminals and were treated like the people with diseases, then those addicts were able to recover from their addictions far better than the addicts were when they were treated as that they are doing some kind of a crime. So this is an actual study which was done, and this shows that we do not need to use the ban approach. Now, what are the examples of Parisankhya Vidhi? Now, I would take 4 examples, and these are very basic examples, but in Devi Mahatamya, there is a text called Devi Mahatamya or Durga Shaptasati, and in it there is a story of a businessman who is thrown out of his own family by his own sons and his wife. And there is the story of then again there is this king who has lost war and he's thrown out of his own kingdom, and both of them go to the ashram of a sage. And they ask the sage, like, we have fallen into the ditch of this world and we are having so much more towards things which have rejected us, which have disrespected us. Then why are we like feeling like that? And then the sage explains them, like, you are you know feeling that because of Maya. These are just different forms of Maya. And then he explains about Devi, her stories, how Devi conquers the demons and all that. And in the end, Devi gives everyone a boon, sorry, that to get elevated from Maya. And on the instructions of the sage, these two individuals, the businessman and the king, start their penance. But the main point where Parisankhya Vidhi comes is that it mentions that both of these individuals, the businessman and the sage, they do not start living the sage life the moment they are taken as students. It says that one they start their journey step by step. So it mentions that each of those individuals, they start with reducing their meals first. So from 3 times a meal 3 meals a day, to they go to 2 meals a day. Then from 2 meals a day they go to 1 meal a day, and then from 1 meal a day they go to complete fasting mode. And this is the example which I wanted to focus more on, that this is where Parisankhya Vidhi comes, that each of those individuals have been given their due time to follow this path. The path is there, and but it is up to them to follow that path up to their own comfort level and capabilities. Second example where Parisankhya Vidhi comes in our scriptures is in Mahabharata. So when the Pandavas are living in the jungle, and one day Yudhishthir gets a dream, and in the dream the deers of the jungle have come to him, and they are requesting him that you have killed enough of us for your eating purpose, that if you start killing us more, then our population will be decreased and our survival will be under threat. So please leave this place and find some other jungle. So many people would start this debate of meat eating and all that, but there is a fact that there are examples of meat eating in our scriptures, and it is not taken as something which is evil and people should be outcasted from the society if they are doing it. And anyways, if there is a kshatriya who is living in a jungle, and they can't live on fruits, because they have to fight, and to fight they need diet. So and that was their culture, by the way. So one example which is here, which is shown that even though those people used to eat meat, even though those people used to hunt, but the writer wants to give us this idea that your actions always impact others around you. And if your actions are threatening the survival of some other individual, then you better moderate your actions, you better control your actions, you better take your actions to some other place. Now, third example, which which comes from Ramayana, and I think we all know this story that there were two brothers in Ramayana known as Sugriv and Vali, and Ram is the friend of Sugriv, and Vali is kind of a the brother who has thrown his own brother out, taken his wife, and Sugriv asks help from Ram, that you are my friend. If you help me get my kingdom back, I will help you in attaining your goal. So Lord Ram goes ahead and kills Vali, and he shoots him with an arrow. Now, when Wali is on the ground and he is, hurt on the moment of dying, then Wali is asking questions to Lord Ram, and he is giving him the reasons that these are the, these are the reasons, or these are the scenarios when a Kshatriya is allowed to hit another individual or hit another being. And in that slok, he says that there are five kinds of animals with paws which are allowed to be eaten. Now, one might say that, okay, why is Wali talking about that? Like, why is he telling about the kinds of animals which are allowed to be hunted by Kshatriyas? Now, what he means here is that there are five kinds of animals which are allowed to be hunted by Kshatriyas. Now, five kinds of pawed animals, animals with paws. Now, what it means, it does not mean that a Kshatriya should go ahead and start killing those five animals. It means that a Kshatriya is also prohibited to kill animals with paws of all the other animals which have paws. And a Kshatriya is also prohibited to kill animals which do not have paws. So if you look at this statement partially, you think that it is encouraging animal hunting and all that, but in reality it is using this idea of implied prohibition to state that this act might be only performed over this very small subset of animals, and in other areas it is prohibited. Therefore it is not banned, and yet at the same time it is prohibited for the majority of the animals. Now, and Wali goes on to say that I am none of those five animals. Then why did you shoot me? And then Lord Ram gives his justification. Now we come to these are the scriptural examples where our scriptures mention that why we need to practice this Parisankhya Vidhi, where this Parisankhya Vidhi has been practiced by our ancestors in the past. And now coming to our current cultural or current societal examples which we follow in our daily lives, and like most of us would relate to it. First is in terms of food. Now, in terms of food, I think most of our homes, there is a rule. There, we would have heard of a rule, even if we don't follow it, that you don't have to eat meat on one day of the week. Either in some families it's Tuesday, or in some families it's Thursday. Now, this is what is one of the examples of Parisankhya Vidhi, which ensures that I am not banning this, item from your palate forever, but I am ensuring that this item will not be, at least will not be consumed on one day of the week. So I am implying prohibition to some extent. Now, the second example in terms of food is the Bali Pratha. Now, many people would say that Bali Pratha is a cruel practice which is practiced, which was practiced, and we should let it go for good. Now, the main reason why Bali Pratha was, brought into place was that when people used to eat meat, and to ensure that the consumption of meat is less, the only way to do that was to offer the food to the gods, and you cannot sacrifice an animal every day. Therefore, you will be forced to kill lesser animals over a period of time. You see that lesser animals will be killed because you are sacrificing the food to the gods. And therefore, Bali Pratha ensured that this habit of meat eating is restricted to only those days, only those events of the year, or of the time. Now, the third example of food is, which comes in our scriptures, is of Parisankhya Vidhi, is the idea of Desh, Kal and Paristhiti. Now, in Ayurveda, it is mentioned that one should always eat seasonal fruits and local fruits, or local foods and local seasonal foods. Now, this is also a form of Parisankhya Vidhi, where you have kind of used an implied prohibition on eating foods which are not local to your area and which are not seasonal. And you can see examples in our temple structures around India, that in some temples you the only thing that you are allowed to offer are complete Vaishnav things, not even onion and garlic. Some places you are allowed to offer milk and honey to gods. In some places you can offer alcohol to the gods, and in some places you can sacrifice animals to the gods. So this is not, people think of it in different terms, but this is not encouragement of killing of animals, but to restrict the killing of animals only to that particular area or region, or only to that particular day of the year, or only to that particular event. But today the opposite thing has happened. So in, say, in ancient times, a family would be there, a meat eating family would be there, and they would be eating. So suppose even if they offer food, offer sacrifice to the gods once a month, they would be eating meat 12 times a year. But today we are eating meat more frequently, and like quite hypocrite of us, that we are eating meat so frequently, and at the same time we are saying that Bali Pratha is violent, and we should not practice it. So the second thing is that in terms of family and desires. Now, family means kids and sexual relationship and romantic relationships. Now there also, if you think about it, that then you realize that the entire institution of marriage, of like Vedic marriage, is a form of Parisankhya Vidhi in terms of desires, and in terms of desires of your relationship, or in terms of desires of money, or the bhog which you want to do in life. And it ensures that all your acts of desires are only controlled and prohibited to your only a subset of very small group of people, where you fulfill those desires and where you practice those things. It is not directed towards everyone in the society. If these examples you are able to relate to, let's go ahead and go to the last slide of this presentation, where I asked this question, that what happens if we don't follow the Parisankhya Vidhi. And the first thing that comes to the mind is that lie which has been propagated to us, and this myth that has been propagated to us, that 70% of Indians eat non-vegetarian food. Therefore non-vegetarian has become mainstream in India, and India has already changed beyond recovery. But these people don't show you the fact that even if 70% of Indians eat non-vegetarian food, the frequency of eating non-vegetarian food is very less, and the majority of Indians who eat non-vegetarian food are eating white meat. They are not eating red meat like pork or beef, as compared to what is being eaten in Western countries or all the non-Vedic countries. Why is this important, and what happens if we actually do? Like, what happens if we actually start eating like them? So let me paint a picture to you, that a regular American meal or a regular Western meal would contain every day would definitely contain a portion of pork or beef or chicken. And every day, that part is present every day in a traditional American meal, not the people, Indians, or the non-Americans who live there. Now imagine that a country, currently 1.4 billion Indians are there. That is 20% of the world population which does not eat these foods on a regular basis, or most of us don't eat these pork or beef. Now why am I saying that? Because 20% of the world population does not eat that, and Majority of the Western countries do it, but their population is not as much. Now think of the current scenario where 14.5% of the greenhouse gases is being produced because of meat, is because of the meat production. The Amazon rainforests are being cut to create farms where food for cows will be created, and those cows will be then slaughtered for food. Now imagine a country like India where 1.4 billion people exist, and out of those 1.4 billion, even 1 billion people start following the typical American diet containing beef and pork and all that. Imagine the strain which it will put on the land. Imagine the the range of the forest that will be cut to create farms and foods for that number of pigs and cows. Imagine the increase in greenhouse gases emission when that happens. And there has been no study done. The study has been done on current emissions, but there has been no study done till date to predict the increase in greenhouse gases if a country like India starts practicing the same dietary habits. And these dietary habits don't give you health, by the way, because if more than 60 to 70% in USA are either overweight or obese, so the nature is like kind of gone. You have destroyed nature, and then you have also destroyed your own body. This is what happens in terms of food if you don't follow this. And why I'm comparing this to America, because a majority of Indian development ideas are being taken from America. And now, since India is rising as an economy and taking its place in the world, in the list of world leaders, we must be careful where we want to take our actions to, because if we just become another America, then we would have a new set of problems to deal with. Second thing, this myth of sexual freedom and free marriages and open relationship, this is also motivated a lot from America and the Western countries, where it has been predicted and propagated everywhere that everyone should be free and everyone should be behave completely freely in terms of sexual conduct or anything, and there should be no moderation. No one should be able to decide, and we as individuals should not bring in any moderation. And there is a common saying that moderation is for cowards in the West. So my simple example here is that out of there, at one point in time, there were more than 7 species of human beings that existed on this planet, and of Homo sapien of human beings, and we Homo sapiens are the only ones which have survived over 2 million for over 2 million years, and we are here today. Out of all the other species, only we have survived. There were other species which were not dumb, they were intelligent, they were stronger than us, they were intelligent than us, and they and might be given chance they would have done better than us, but only we have survived because we have one quality which they didn't. And our quality was to form groups which could stay together, and which allowed us to do domesticate animals, which allowed us to do farming, and hence build the roots of civilization, which others did not have, which the Neanderthals and the Denisovans, all these other species did not have. They did not have the capability to form large groups and stay together. Why this large group and staying together helped us? Because that allowed us to take care of our babies, to take care of our sick people, and to take care of our elders. Now you know that I am referring here to a kind of structure which we today know as joint families. And human babies are the only babies on this planet which are vulnerable for the very long time after they are born. When a deer is born, a deer starts walking within 1 hour. If it doesn't, it dies. When a child a bird's child is born, it will start behaving and learning flying very quickly as compared to humans. A baby is vulnerable for around 3 years. Till 3 years of time, a human baby is not able to do anything, any protection of its own. It is completely vulnerable to the world. And this is the structure, our capability to come together and take care of the people around us has allowed us to survive for all these years. And today it reflects in the form of joint families in the Indian civilizational context, in form of joint families or families where we see uncles and grandfathers and all these far relatives. Today we might think of this as, some kind of old structure, but this old structure which has allowed us to exist till date, to take care of the members, so that our survival is ensured for the longer time. Our this gene pool of this particular race will be taken forward to a longer stretch of time. Now this idea of complete sexual freedom and free marriages and all these things, this is a direct attack on this most ancient learning that we as humans have received. And these people might look like they are modern, but they are more tribal than the tribal people who existed 20,000 years ago. Because every culture in the world, even though they were not related to each other, came up with an institution of marriage. That means that marriage is an institution which is common across all the cultures, and monogamy, even though it is not common across all the cultures, but it is the most popular. That means it shows that this is a successful institution which ensures the survival of human race and which ensures peace in society. Even a research was done in the United States, a survey was done where it found out that a society where polygamy is practiced has higher rates of crimes and violence as compared to the society where monogamy is practiced. Now, if I show you this data and if I tell you these things, then you realize that this idea of all these ruthless habits of food, ruthless habits of sexual conduct, and ruthless habits of capitalism which is happening could hamper our country's progress in future, could hamper our the speed with which we are growing in the future. And therefore we need to implement this idea of Parisankhya Vidhi. We need to implement this idea of moderation. Even if you don't care about all these things, think of when your doctor says that, advises you to take a medicine and start watching your diet. What is he basically suggesting you? He's basically suggesting you to practice Parisankhya Vidhi, to practice moderation in your life. When your doctor says that you need to control your calorie intake, you need to control your sugar intake, he doesn't know. But this idea of moderation, this idea of controlling things, has been the most ancient of the Indian ideas. And if you practice it, if India as a state or Indians as a people start practicing it, then it would be very helpful for us in the future. It would save us from a lot of problems which we might face because we are blindly following the West. So that is one thing. It would also help us to improve our own lives. For example, if your doctor says that you need to watch your sugar or watch your sugar intake, then you can use the exclusivity principle of Parisankhya Vidhi, which says that I would be doing this act but only if I do this. For example, I would eat sugar but only if there is some festival. And the second part of Parisankhya Vidhi is that I reduce it over a period of time. So if my doctor says that I need to reduce my calorie intake, so I don't stop my food intake on the next day. That would hamper my body. I decide that I would stop it over a period of 1 month. I would reduce my calorie intake over a period of month, or I would reduce my sugar intake over a period of month. That is more practical, that is more scientific, I would say, and that would help us better as compared to other ideas of absolutist mindset. So that's it from my side. I hope you guys understood what I said, and it helped you to understand this very ancient of the Vedic philosophies.
I just wanted to ask about the polygamy aspect that you were mentioning. You said that it's been found that monogamy across cultures results in more peaceful way of living, has happened for a long time, and that how it ties in with Parisankhya Vidhi. And suddenly it came to my mind about some of our rulers in the past had more than one spouse. How does
100%.
with this? Because what my limited knowledge says is that they were they used to structure their lives in a way in those days, the rulers, where they were the examples. They were setting examples for how the society should be. So how do we understand that in light of what you've said? Thank you.
Yes, definitely. Thank you for this question, and very nice question, by the way. And if you read the stories of the kings in medieval ages, you don't even need to go to the ancient ages. But even if you read the stories of medieval ages, where kings had like 20 wives, 30 wives, and they had families of the size of villages. So, but basically, you realize this fact that why all the acts that happened, do you see the level of violence that happens in royal families, and you compare it to the violence that happens on the ground with common people, and you realize that the common people do not kill each other for land so often as the royal families did in the past. You see that most of the kings, be it like Hindu kings or Buddhist king, Jain kings, whatever, or the Muslim kings, the most ruthless acts of violence that they did was against their own families in pursuit of kingdom. They would go ahead and kill their own cousins, or they kill their own brothers, kill their own parents and grandparents. Aurangzeb did all those things to his own brothers and family members. Now that is an outcome, if you would say, of the extreme level of polygamy that they have practiced, right? And on the other hand, I am not sure that if there is a documentation on the common people that lived during that time, but common people today are also practicing basically the same thing. And we are seeing that like the level of violence clearly is not of that level that those people did followed in their societal cultures.
Thank you. I guess I was asking more from the perspective of Hindu kings, because I
Yes, yes.
understand the
Including
context of
Hindu kings. Yeah, I am saying that including Hindu kings also.
yeah.
So if you don't practice anything, no hammer is going to come from sky and start dropping it on you. The Vedic scriptures do not give commandments that this is what you have to do and this is what you don't have to do. The Vedic scriptures are very clear that you don't practice it, you follow, you suffer the consequences of it. Now, in today's world, the Vedic scriptures are the root of dharma is clearly based on nature. Most of our festivals, most of our cultural events are based on natural occurrings, on the cutting of crops, on the change of seasons. But if we don't start, if we just make it as a religious event and we start following it for our own ego without taking care of the nature, then Vedic scriptures aren't going to do anything themselves. The nature will take care of those things. The nature will punish us enough so until we become disciplined. So Vedic scriptures never said that this is the commandment and those who do not follow this will be going to hell. They means they will have their own karma and they will have the own consequences based on their karma.
I wondered, Kapidharji, amongst the various different aspects you covered under Parisankhya Vidhi, is whether one thing would also come under it is moderation in one's ability to use one's mental faculties, all mental faculties. I'm not just talking about brain, but all the mind, not just intellect. Because I know that often we think that it's West that does a lot of binary thinking, and in our culture, the knowledge tells us to, allow different views, to expose ourselves to different views and accept them. But at the same time, I find that a lot of Hindus who are into the dharmic things and textual things tend to assume that someone who doesn't think like them is automatically thinking like a Western way. And I find that reverse thing to be
Okay.
binary thinking. Would that
Yeah.
fit in within Parisankhya Vidhi, or is that a different aspect of our text?
Okay. So this idea that like whatever is not Hindu is by default, like the individuals, first of all, that it might be because of our lack of knowledge that we are thinking. Because the main thing is that in today's world, so when Library of Alexandria was burnt, there were 40,000 books inside it, and which burned along with it. But today we are not aware that there are 3 million Indian scriptures which are yet to be translated into the languages which we speak today in English or in Hindi, whatever. 3 million Indian scriptures. So India is such a big land, and it has always been land of where like intellectuals existed. The reality is there are so many points of view, so many points of views, that today no Hindu can stand up and say that I have read this and therefore this has been the like the only reality. This has been the reality could be a statement, but to say that this has been the only reality and no other reality ever existed will be like controversial. I'm not sure if it controversial is the right word, but would not be accurate. So you cannot draw one line across the Hindu philosophy which crosses through all of them. There is only few. One is the cow. The consensus that cow should not be killed. Second is that natural elements, that is the rivers and the mountains, should be respected. They should not be exploited. And apart from these two or three things, I think there are millions of differences, I would honestly say. And the people who say that just because their own idea does not match with it, that means it is not Indian. That is not the correct way to go about it. And that is definitely not Parisankhya Vidhi.
Sorry, so people who have binary points of view and viewing things that way does not fit within Parisankhya Vidhi or does fit within the Parisankhya Vidhi concepts? That,
No, binary, I think binary is not, does not. It is kind of a spectrum. Most of
so
the thing, most of the things are a kind of a spectrum, except for a very few rare border edge cases, I would say.
so Parisankhya Vidhi applies to views as well, just like it does to other aspects of life.
Yes,
Right?
yes, definitely. Yes, because in Vedant, if you go, so there are different aspects. So one would say Dvait Vedant, some would say Advait Vedant. Then some would say that, oh no, I don't believe in Vedant. I only believe, I would believe in Karm Kand. I don't believe in, these higher things. So there is a spectrum there, right? Now, if you ask a person who follows Dvait Vedant, they would say that Advaitins are wrong. Now, if you ask a Advait Vedant person, they would say that Dvait Vedantins are wrong. So, but yeah, the reality is that there is an entire spectrum of these thought processes.
Kapidhwaj, I want to know how we can apply Parisankhya Vidhi to identity politics, or even if not the politics of it, then just our understanding of self-determination, whether it be how, the aggression that we can see with interreligious tensions, or we see, xenophobia, or we see homophobia, or we see sexism. So these are all consequences of very extreme understanding of our identities. So how exactly can we apply Parisankhya Vidhi to it? And are there any examples in history that may give it more sort of a more strong backbone?
So regarding, I think these ideas of which you said, that homophobia and all the other ideas. So there has always been I think two kinds of ideologies or multiple ideologies which has existed in our country. And say that there is a person who is religious today, and he would view all the scriptures back from his own religiosity, right? And wherever he finds something which does not agree with him, most of us, our biases, because of that, we would reject that. And for someone who follows it, for someone who does something, they would look for examples in history which where that was in our favor, like yeah, right. So to say that homophobia and all those things, I would say that this idea of sexuality and transgender and these things, the discrimination, I think, based on sexual orientation and other things. So I haven't found, I might be wrong, there might be scriptural evidences, but I haven't found any scriptural evidences of discrimination on the basis of these things. Means there might be, but I haven't found it personally. Means and my knowledge base is very limited to such things, but personally I haven't seen any example. Like In other faiths around the world, you see these examples that if there is a homophobic person, then they should be killed, or they have done a kind of sin. But in Vedic faith, I haven't seen a similar example where you in a scripture it is mentioned that if there is a homophobic person, then they should be killed.
Kapilodji, I think you did not understand my question. I'll just sort of rephrase it for you. What I mean is there textual evidence of how people like India has a lot of indigenous diversity, but we have sort of mastered the art of coexistence. That
Yes.
cannot happen without moderation principle being applied to the understanding we have towards identity and its self-determination.
Yes, yeah,
So that
yeah,
is what I mean. Even if we, cancel out the ideas of sexism or homophobia for that matter.
yeah. So that is one example which I wanted to, because you use the word homophobia, right? So there has been, so that is what I'm saying, that these things are not the concerned topics over which people were determined to kill each other, right? So these things were not in on extremities of that level. Now, second thing which you said, that moderation in terms of identity. So definitely, because as I said that there were six schools of thoughts, right? So at the core level itself, you have six schools of thoughts. Now, definitely there will be disagreements on each of them, someone trying to convince the other that. And in our history, our past is filled with such examples, like Buddha doing shastrarth. The entire idea of shastrarth was based on that. So the Indian system was very clear that if you do not agree with me, you can come here and debate with me. You can try to convince me that how you are right. I will try to convince you how I am right. And let's see whoever wins, and then, whoever wins. And there was no idea of violence in that, because these things are intellectual pursuits, and intellectual pursuits were not to be pursued through arms. They are to be pursued through, debates and topics and discussions. Now, in textual evidence, there is a lot of khandan, or you would say discrediting of the other ideology, and that exists. And I'm not saying that world is very hunky-dory and Indians were always loving each other, giving each other hugs. Means Vedantin is writing that, okay, the person who does murti puja is like worshipping only the shadow and not the real thing. Now that person who's doing murti puja will kind of fire back at him in some other text, like, okay, those who are doing this are kind of blinded by this. Now this kind of healthy debate and healthy competition was there, but there it never went to the point of violence, except for few of the examples. Very few examples are there, but they are not that important in my thought.
Thank you very much, Kapilodji. With that, we will conclude the question and answer session as well as the talk for today. Thank you to all the viewers who joined us today. Thank you to Kapilodji for coming to our YouTube platform again and sharing something that clearly has piqued everyone's interest. Thank you very much. Namaste.